we were looking for a defensive strategy, right? And so my first experience with Bitcoin was this was a defensive treasury strategy I could use to save my company. And and so I studied enough to conclude I could buy it. And so after I did that, I realized, wow, there's a lot more to Bitcoin than just digital gold, just making a digital technology investment. And so I started actively researching. So one way Bitcoin changed me is it had me go down the rabbit hole and I started studying economics, Austrian economics, right? Bitcoin led me to read Murray Rothbard, A History of Economic Thought, and to read Conceived in Liberties. And then it led me to go back and reread all of world history. And then it led me into 1,000 podcasts. And then it led me to listen to dozens of podcasts, on Bitcoin development and study the Bitcoin wars, and then start thinking about. And then it led me to think about the rest of the crypto industry, and then it led me to go back and listen to every word uttered by Gary Gensler, in a class he taught at MIT 2 years before I even knew I cared about Bitcoin. And pretty soon you're reading books you wouldn't expect to read. You're reading every bill about the crypto industry going through Congress. So it sucked me into the state of being a student again. And most of the time,
Mm.
you think once you're past the age of 20 something, you're not a student anymore, right? You don't need to be a student. And Bitcoin taught me that I really needed to go back and relearn everything. I needed to relearn economics. I needed to relearn politics. I needed to relearn, technology. And then and that led me to go back and look at my own company again and say, maybe I need to rethink how we're going to use this. And that led us to issuing convertible bonds to buy Bitcoin. And that led us to thinking about issuing equity to buy Bitcoin. That led us to thinking, well, it's not enough that we learn how to do it. We need to educate other corporations on how to do
Mm.
it. When I discovered Bitcoin, or when I first bought Bitcoin, I was ready to retire. I thought I had served more than 30 years as a public company CEO. I thought, I have nothing left to prove in the world. There's not much for me to do. I'll just go ahead and retire and gracefully disappear from history. And Bitcoin plopped itself into my life and first teased me and then seduced me. And then it dragged me onto that stage today. Right. And so I was dragged onto a world stage, and I found myself now, instead of quietly retiring, um, I was now drawn into a role of advocacy such that I would get on a plane and fly to Sao Paulo, or fly to Uruguay, or fly to Prague, and obsess over things that I never need to obsess over, and go back on CNBC or go on Fox, go on television, and or sit down and record 1,000 hours of podcast. And these are all things that I discovered late in life. I would say I'm a late bloomer, right? Like I'm much older than the average Bitcoiner, right? And so it's like, how did this all happen? And I think it's Bitcoin inspired me, maybe inspired me, catalyzed me. So it changed how I spend my time. It changed my intellectual interest. It changed our corporate strategy, and it gave me a mission, and I felt compelled to do it, right? Bitcoin serves us all up a mission if we listen carefully to what it has to tell us.
I love it a lot. From all those rules, 21 rules that you presented at Bitcoin Prague, what is the favorite one? Like if you had to pick one, and why is it that?
I mean, I think the most important one is the final one: spread Bitcoin with love, right? Bitcoin is the solution to 8 billion people's problems. Bitcoin is the transformation of capital from analog to digital. Bitcoin is the singularity that brings science to economics. Bitcoin is instrumental for the human race to reach its full potential. If we're going to 10x and 100x or 1000x from here, we can't do it without mastering this sort of digital capital, right? Without mastering digital energy. And so we need to spread it to the world. Whenever something moves faster than the environment can adjust, we get a phenomenon known as a shock wave. When I move through air faster than the rate at which the air can get out of the way, right? The rate at which the air moves or the air communicates with itself is called the speed of sound. It's literally the speed of sound. The reason that the sound moves that fast, that's how fast the air is carrying it, right? So when I move faster than the speed of sound, I create a shock wave. When I create a shock wave, there's just sound and fury and a atomic, a sonic boom and turbulence. And it's very disruptive. It's very painful, right? And so Bitcoin is that shock wave moving through the civilization. And on one hand, we feel impelled to spread it, to share it with our friends, with our family, with our corporation, with our country, with our politicians, with our intellectuals, with our leaders. We need to share it. But nobody likes being slammed into, at supersonic speed. That's painful. It's the difference between going below the speed of sound and going faster than the speed of sound is the difference between me, swinging a baseball bat at your head while you're looking that way versus me doing this with a baseball bat saying, you should duck, I'm about to swing it, right? One of them is interesting, maybe it's entertaining, and the other is brutal. And so if we're going to do this, we need to do it with love, not hate. We can't hate people because they reject, because they resist, because they don't get it, right? We shouldn't think, that we need to hate the banks because they don't custody Bitcoin, or hate your government because they don't embrace Bitcoin, or hate your boss because the company doesn't buy Bitcoin, right? That it's a natural reaction, but it's an immature reaction. What we ought to think is they're going to need it. They don't understand it. It's understandable they don't understand it. It's the most shocking economic thing that's happened in their life. Maybe it's the most shocking thing to happen in economics in 100,000 years. It's a fire raging. Fire is scary. People run from the fire. Don't wave the fire in your sister's face, right? Don't set your family on fire, right? Have a little bit of consideration there, right? With such a powerful idea. So I think the world's a better place if we spread Bitcoin, but I think we got to do it with love.